Good afternoon. My name is Robert Bullard, and I direct the Environmental Justice Resource Center at Clark Atlanta University in Atlanta, Georgia. And I was asked to speak briefly on some of the work that I've been doing over the last 20 years. I wrote a book in 1997 called Just Transportation, Dismantling Race and Class Barriers in Mobility. And in that book, we talked about addressing some of the disparities as it relates to what I refer to as transportation apartheid, those with cars and those who don't have cars and who depend on transit. And what I tried to do over the last couple of decades is to reiterate that when we look at this whole question of transportation and civil rights and transportation and health, it's important to understand that even when we look at the way that we funded transportation, disproportionately funding highways, roads, and not funding transit, what we've done is to subsidize pollution and exacerbated public health. And if you look at this whole question of if in fact we are to address a number of problems and challenges, and you've heard some of them in terms of mobility, access to jobs, this whole question of livability. I think investing more in transit and alternatives to driving can have co-benefits in terms of improving air quality. Most of the studies will show that by investing in clean fuel vehicles, particularly buses, you can in fact have health benefits that flow to those non-attainment areas which are heavily populated by low-income people of color, working-class people. And when you look at this whole question of how we subsidize transportation and what it has gotten us into, it's basically a transportation sprawl. And sprawl development has created automobile dependency, and to a large extent has created tremendous air pollution problems, in particular as it relates to ground level ozone. And when we look at investing more in infrastructure to get people out of their cars and to clean, efficient, affordable, accessible transit, you can see health benefits. For example, in 1996, during the second, in 2 weeks in Atlanta, the 1996 Olympics, when you couldn't drive your car for 2 weeks, we had to park our cars and ride MARTA. And so during that 2-week period of time, the number of cars on the highways actually decreased by 20%, and the hospitalization rate for asthma decreased by 46%. There are studies showing, just a study came out just last year, two researchers from the University of Colorado show that when we clean up our air, we can also extend life expectancy. At 62, I know by cleaning up air, the average city had 5 months of extra life. I know I want my 5 months. So when we talk about this whole question of emissions and air quality and the fact that we have an asthma epidemic, and if you look at this whole question of creating livable and sustainable communities and how we can grow smarter at the same time, investing in transit, investing in infrastructure, alternatives to driving, we will also, there are benefits that could also extend not just to criteria pollutants, but also in terms of greenhouse gases, in terms of reduction of CO2. And by the way, transportation accounts for about a third of greenhouse gases. So when we look at this whole question of the benefits that could accrue from having viable transit systems from New York to California and cities in between like Atlanta, and I live in a city where MARTA is hanging on by its fingernails. It's the 9th largest transit system in the country, but it's one of the only major transit systems that does not receive one dime from the state of Georgia. And so we are basically $57 million in the hole right now. We just got $25 million from ARC stimulus money to hold us back from really drastic cuts. You know, there's a proposal to cut one-day service, to stop running on Fridays. You know, what would that do if you couldn't have MARTA buses and trains running on Friday? People who are transit-dependent, who depend on the system, you know, you can't just decide, well, I'm not going to work on Friday. You'll get fired. So we're talking about drastic measures that need to be put in place, and this is a national campaign because it's a national crisis. And I think it's time for when the new reauthorization is put in place that we do have some transportation equity and somehow move away from highway robbery. And that's a book that I wrote in 2004. Thank you.